All right, hello, and welcome back to our Connect series, where we are going to be discussing some recent projects with the teams that brought them to life. I'm Megan Duffy with Fluid Interiors, and I'll be moderating today's discussion, which is all about legal, featuring Taft, formerly known as Briggs & Morgan. So let me introduce you to our panel of experts that are joining me. First up is Jennifer Stum. She's director at Cushman & Wakefield in the Project and Development Services Group. Jennifer has spent time at several design firms, which she believes provided an important perspective on the real estate project management process. Since joining Cushman & Wakefield in 2014, Jennifer has focused on guiding local and national clients through the process of defining their real estate needs and aligning that need with their business goals and objectives. Welcome, Jennifer. We also have Scott Herlinger. He is current National Vice President, Interior Design, and also serves as the Minneapolis Design Director and Principal of Nelson's Minneapolis office. Lots of big roles there. Scott serves as a thought leader within corporate, residential, and mixed-use interior design with 26 years of experience. Scott's strong interior design background allows him to provide creative guidance and customized project services to Nelson's regional and national interior design teams and clients. He provides mentorship for all aspects of the design process. He's been an active leader within IIDA over the last many years and has served locally as the president of the Northland chapter, nationally as the chair of the National Nominating Committee, vice president on the International Interior Design Association Board of Directors, and was most recently as the international president. He was also inducted into the IIDA College of Fellows in 2017. And we'll just stop the resume there because it goes on and on.
I'm old.
You're busy. I don't know how you have time for all of that. And then lastly, we have Jennifer Summers, Business Development Executive with Hayworth. She also brings 25 years of experience in the design industry. She has a strong workplace design, project management, and business development expertise in her current role with Hayworth. She enjoys partnering with clients and the real estate and design community to present Hayworth knowledge, resources, and tools early on in the design process. Jen leverages her breadth of knowledge of the entire design process to help guide clients through the furniture process to maximize results. Welcome, Jen. And thank you guys for being here today and helping bring this story to our audience.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Be here. Yeah. All right. So we're going to take a look at some of the stats about the project here that you'll see on the screen. And you can see that it's really large in scale. They're located in the IDS Tower, where they have been for some time. Jennifer, can you share a little bit on their history with IDS and the early real estate search?
Yeah, for sure. So Taft's actually been, at the time we started the real estate search back in 2017, they'd been in IDS for over 40 years. So that was really part of their identity. IDS was where Briggs & Morgan or Taft was. So, when we started the real estate process, it was a big deal, but we did want to take the time and explore other options. So we did look around downtown. We took the time to fit plan, had Scott's support and fit planning all the other options that are out there and finding the right place. In the end, decided IDS was still their home. And their goal, in the end was just to reduce their footprint. So that's what they did by staying in IDS. Luckily, through the process, talking a little bit about the schedule, we were able to negotiate a couple floors of swing space in IDS, which helped us reduce the overall schedule because they were currently 5 floors. So we were able to take those 2 swing spaces, reduce their overall phases to 6. But it still took 2.5 years from when we started design to construction to get the 4 floors done. So it was a lengthy project, but it was a fun one.
Yeah, well, it's a great team that you've got assembled here too. How did the team come together? And what were some of those advantages of having that early team partnership?
Yeah, I think it's really important to get the team involved as early as possible. We luckily had the benefit of having Nelson right next to us early on, looking at all the properties. But the same with Fluid. We went as early as we could looking for a furniture partner. We did go through the RFP process. We thought that was important, right, to see what options are out there and price it. But in the end, Fluid had a great, previous relationship with Taft, and we thought that was important to continue that. And they provided a great solution at a great cost. So it ended up being the right choice for us.
Yeah, that's great. I know I've had the opportunity to speak with the customer when we're working on a case study, and it's just really clear that the whole team just worked super well together and had a lot of fun along the way, especially for such a lengthy project.
Yeah.
Scott, as Nelson was guiding the design process, what were Taft's major goals from that aspect of the project that really cemented their choice in IDS?
Well, I mean, they came at it very team-based, and they really kind of looked at it long-term, going, okay, what are we going to do, 5 years, 10 years? They were there for 40. They're like, very acquainted with the building, but that didn't mean they were going to stay. But really, the trends from the legal world that they really wanted to own were universal-size offices. They really still wanted access to natural light for all employees, not just attorneys. That was very important. They wanted very efficient use of interior space. They wanted a better approach to how their LAAs worked and their administrative staff to their attorneys. They were looking at new metrics. So all of those came into play. And when you start laying those out on multiple floor plates, it really became clear relatively quickly, which is why you do this, right? Which is why you plan multiple buildings, because generally a building will rise to the top, and either from efficiency standpoint or from just the way it laid out. But IDS really hit almost every mark. It's really hard to beat those full floor to ceiling windows. This building was kind of set up for professional services, and Universal Office worked beautifully in this building, and that really secured it. And then the amount of natural light with the use of invulnerable walls, which we all brought into the project, really, really helped seal the deal. So it was a no-brainer almost.
Yeah, that's quite the commitment they have to the building, and even recognizing to go through all the phasing. So great that there was temporary space available. If we get oriented to the floor plans here, we'll take a look at the 22nd floor, which is kind of a unique floor plate. Jennifer, I know that community and client experience are really important to Taft. So how did they approach the 22nd floor in sort of separating both that client-facing space and more of the internal functions?
Yeah, the 22nd floor, I wouldn't say it's quite cut in half, but it's close to client versus internal space on that floor. It's anchored kind of by this Minnesota room that's at the one end. This was a huge, important space for Taft. They are really client-focused in Minneapolis, and they wanted to make sure that they could use that space not only for themselves, but for their clients. So it was a big program requirement to have all of this space dedicated to one room. The room can be divided into two, with a skyfold wall that actually kind of hides up in the ceiling, which is great. And then the that room is actually anchored by pre-function and the cafe, which is awesome. So all three of those rooms can be leveraged for large events, if and when we ever get back to them. So they have this great space that they all do, and they're all connected by technology too, which is fantastic. So they can really show the same material in all those rooms, and everyone can be heard in all those spaces. And then when not in use, they have this really big, large 16-foot wide billboard in the cafe that they can use to do company messaging or, show the weather and the traffic. It does all kinds of fun stuff. But you talked a little bit about the separation. So we kind of have that conferencing space, and then we have the internal space. Really kind of separating the internal and the external. Security is really important in law firms. We keep finding more and more law firm clients kind of auditing their lawyers and saying, you need to make sure that the space is secure, right? Nobody other than your employees should be in this space. So it was really important to provide that physical separation between those two spaces. And I know Scott likes to talk about the metrics, kind of happening. We have a lot more conference seats in this floor than typical law firms have across the country. But, for Taft, it was important to really, build that community and allow this space to be used by everybody.
Yeah, well, that's a great asset there. And Scott, I know Jennifer touched on the client areas adjacent to the staff lounge. So outside of, providing a client experience, the employee experience is important too. What are some of the features of the staff lounge from what they had before, and has it changed since COVID?
Well, surprisingly, Taft never actually closed down solid. They have stayed going this entire time, and because of they are spread out in floors and the way that they're arranged, they were able to do that. So that was one great thing. But when we laid out the large lounge on this floor, there was definitely a theory behind it, and there was a purpose. It was really to bring the lawyers together. As Jen said, they were on 5 floors, and within those previous 5 floors, there was individual break rooms on each floor. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, and I think we all know this, when you start to do that, you start to segment your people by floor, and they don't really cross encounter each other. And there's not a lot of that interchangeable commentary that you get when you really come together. And we've proven it many, many times, but it's in legal, it's written about all the time, the importance of bringing all of your attorneys together ad hoc, not for a specific purpose, but just ad hoc to get them to going and getting used to seeing each other, that they're all part of one culture. So really bringing this lounge, and it's at the bottom of an existing internal stair that's not overly grand at all. It was an existing stair that we refurbished and recreated, but it does connect all the floors, and they're connected right by where on the upper floors, there's small coffee areas for them to grab a coffee in the morning, things like that. But really it drives people down to the main floor, the main 22nd floor lounge for all of the bigger events, lunches, breakfasts, things of that nature. And what's really curious is that a lot of meetings are occurring there now, a lot of collegial meetings. So that's a really good outcome of this.
Yeah, that's great. I know there is a little bit of a shift in the legal workplace design around just the types of meeting spaces, not just having the traditional, but having some more of those informal spaces as well. With the coffee areas, I think one of the pieces that you mentioned intentionally in the design around seating and microwaves to just help encourage people going down. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, I mean, the minute and what always happens in design is like you start with it's just coffee, and then the client puts in microwaves and everything else, and all of a sudden everything's undone. Luckily, working with Julie and her team, they really stuck to this. They understood the importance of this. It truly is coffee, and you can grab what you need, but on this 22nd floor, there's a much better coffee machine, mm-hmm. and that's intentional. You can get any kind of coffee you'd want to create there. So if you want good coffee, you're going to come down to 22. And you're going to have your lunch there. You're going to do that kind of a thing. And it really, I really applaud them on really sticking to this, but they're seeing the results of it. They're really seeing the fruits of it, of people seeing each other and, different practices, different law, but they start to talk to each other and they find out there's other things they can do. So that cross-pollination really helps in law firms.
Yeah, that's a great example of design encouraging certain behaviors. So,
right.
Jen, we talked a lot here about the customer-facing areas on the 22nd floor and tying into that employee lounge as well. Overall, is that tie-in with larger trends that we're seeing in legal workplace design?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think law firms are looking to the work environment to not only enhance their externally facing brand, but also the employee experience, which obviously, Scott talked a lot about, but they want the physical environment to really represent their values and their mission, and in Taft's case, most importantly, their culture, and making sure that that's represented. So designing those dedicated spaces and kind of shifting the square footage from the individual workspace to those shared kind of social spaces and conference centers is happening much more frequently. And so at Taft, because as you said, such a large part of their culture is about being community minded, even though they reduced their overall square footage by probably close to 20%, it was really important for them to still maintain that large space on the 22nd floor. We also know that the legal field historically is a pretty high stress, profession and continues to be. And so I think to support employees, the research has shown that providing those social spaces offers employees variety and choice in how and where they work throughout the day. It also fosters well-being and really encourages employees to relax and connect with colleagues in a different way. And I know I hope we get back to socializing and collaborating in person again someday. And I think when we do, I think that those spaces are actually going to be more important than ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Totally agree.
So let's take a look at some of the typical staff floors. Scott, give us an understanding of how those floors are organized, because I think that they really follow kind of a similar pattern.
Yeah, they are so after you get off at 22nd floor, the 3/4 of the floor, like we mentioned, are really, customer facing or coming together spaces. The remainder of 22nd floor is all administrative, and we brought all the administrative function to one area. Again, those guys all near each other really helps, speeds up communication. They all cross-function each other with each other every day. So it really, rather than separating them out on multiple floors, bringing them all together, a lot more efficient use of their time when they're dealing with each other. So then once you get to the remainder of the floors, 23, 4, and 5, they're all set up almost identical. There are some deviations, but really the point of that was being long-term flexibility. So as that one practice group grows, they can grow exponentially without having to get a contractor and dismantling part of the floor to make that work. And we also, like we mentioned, they're all built on universal office. The LAAs are built on a team mode, and the new ratios are far more aligned with current trends. And then, really looking at the other interior spaces for the paralegals, which are private offices. Some legal trends have put paralegals in workstations, but Taft really felt that it was important to keep them in private office due to the amount of heads down work that they do. And then the remainder of the floor is, of course, built in with internal conferencing and or war rooms. They really have done away with a vast majority of their filing. There really is not the big file rooms that there used to be, which, a major renovation does prompt you to do these things. But they really have gone digital, and, they really did a great job about that. And then, for those of you familiar with IDS, they have those strange corners that doesn't allow for universal office, but it does allow for some great conferencing capabilities. So on each corner now, rather than someone having the corner office, there's now the corner conferencing. So they're either lounge type or just, standardized conference rooms.
Yeah. And I think another piece that maybe changed for them was around reduction in printers as well, right? So saving some space that way.
Well, when you go into this and working with Jen, there's a lot of work that goes into these analysis of what do you have, what could you have, what does that save? And it's amazing when you do that, the amount of money that comes out of the budget. And Jen's a genius with a budget, I'm going to tell you that. So in working with these guys, we found that if we could devise a new way of looking at printing, really the amount of money they could bring out of it, the leases they could take out of their space, there was a lot of efficiencies. And so we really did bring down the amount of printers by a vast majority.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, Jen is very swift with the budget. That's for sure. Okay, let's talk a little bit about those private offices. So we've mentioned a couple times about the universal size. That's a really big trend in legal workplace design, and also the reduction in size, right? Before they were oftentimes large, maybe 225 square feet. Now they're more often to be 120 square feet, so they have to work pretty hard. Jen, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the features that we're seeing in Taft's private office and how that relates to larger trends?
Sure. Well, Scott mentioned, Taft, like many firms, have implemented a universal, one size office for attorneys. But from a furniture perspective, we really created a simple kit of parts between the attorney and paralegal offices, the paralegal offices being located on the, interior of the building, around the core, and are slightly smaller and shorter in length, but they still utilize that same furniture configuration or components with just a slightly narrower storage component. So just shy of 120 square feet roughly. So I think they're 9 by 13 are the attorney offices, which is extremely efficient in their configuration, but they really offer a lot of features. So the work surfaces, as you'll see, are all height adjustable, which is pretty much a must today. But what's unique in the legal field is, even though they have reduced a lot of paper, they're still pretty paper intensive. And so we often see the continuous L configuration to allow for that extra piling space. and for materials to just be more easily accessible and all at one level when you're at standing height. And what attorneys are storing and the amount of storage needed is really changing. So as a result, we're just seeing more diversification of storage. So not surprising, the overheads are long gone, but filing is probably reduced in half with just 1 2-drawer lateral file and a box file. And then attorneys are really looking for the ability to personalize their office a little bit more. And so we're seeing incorporating decorative shelving either in wood or another contrasting material like metal. In this case, it was just the match the work surface finish. And then a tackable material or a magnetic surface. You could do a fabric wrap panel, or for a higher level of finish, a back painted glass. We're seeing quite a bit. And then another must are the personal storage towers, which is really designed to store coats and bags and boots and other things, which of course we need that in Minnesota. But one thing that was unique with Taft is that the coat hook was actually located on the back side of that personal storage, on the outside of that unit, to just keep it out of sight and easily accessible, but free up space within the personal storage tower for shelves, because they wanted that additional storage. And then just other musts are the 2 monitor arms, allowing for proper ergonomics and just freeing up that additional space on the work surface. And then we provided the desktop power module, so you've got that easy connectivity for your devices. And integration of technology and wire management was really important to Taft and the design of those private offices. So the offices actually have sort of a hinge door, wood box, modesty box, I'll call it, up against the wall under that height adjustable table, which really allows all the wiring to kind of neatly tuck out of sight under that surface. So, overall, the design of the attorney offices as well as the paralegal offices really turned out beautifully. They're just really light in scale with that beautiful walnut veneer and white surfaces, and just a really clean, simple aesthetic that I think really complemented Nelson's overall architectural design and vision.
Yeah, and I'll add one other thing. One decision we made early on was to only allow 1 guest chair instead of 2. 2 gets tight in some of these smaller offices, but also switching to 1 helped our budget, right? We could use that money in other areas. And it really encourages the use of those great corner conference rooms that Scott was talking about earlier. So that was an important decision for them to kind of force everybody to get out of their offices and meet with only 1 chair now.
Yeah, the offices are beautiful. So, Scott, how did the attorneys react? Even though they're beautiful, they're smaller.
Well, of course, at the beginning, there's what you don't know, you fear. So what they were all used to, but they were used to such large scale. But really, the planning committee they were positive that people were going to accept this and that they were really going to embrace it. Of course, you don't do that until you get into the office, right? So with the glass front sliding door, that was important because the sliding door, it took away what a swing door perceives to be taking up space. So that helped that. But once they got into the offices, they quickly adjusted. And quite honestly, even some of the very, very, very paper intensive attorneys, which sometimes had 2 offices, just sheer size, we were able to accommodate them. And it's always shocking to me, though, how human beings can adjust to absolutely anything. And so, but these attorneys did adjust to this really quickly, and they did enjoy it right away. They figured, they go, this is really working out. When we walked around, they're like, how is it? They're like, this is great. I don't miss my other office at all, right? So overall, I think 98% loved it. It was new furniture. It was a new vibe. It was so much brighter than their 40-year-old space, as you can imagine. So overall, I think it was a good acceptance rate, I would say.
Yeah, imagine. So the other aspect of sort of having those typical standards that make it easy to deploy this is the workstation. Jen, do you want to tell us a little bit about what their typical includes and how that aligns with different trends in legal workplace?
Sure. As Scott mentioned, all the legal administrators are co-located and organized in these neighborhoods with the file island, as you can see in the middle, which was a great way to house all the files that were previously in the attorney offices and made it easier to manage that way. And, having them all co-located, of course, increased that collaboration, and the attorneys liked having kind of one place to go and sort of backup resources when somebody was maybe out or had stepped away from their station. So each of the 6x9 workstations is designed with a continuous U-shaped work surface, with the main 6-foot work surface being height adjustable. And so each station has the 2 monitor arms and paper management tools for easy organization of tasks. And the storage included a total of 6 filing drawers of various lengths, and then they had the 2 box drawers for personal items. And then a combination storage tower for the workstations as well, so that they had space to put their coats and personal items, with a bookcase that's accessible from the work surface side for additional books or binders, but also a place for personal accessories. And then each station actually has a solid surface transaction top, creating a really easy way to converse with attorneys and a spot to drop off materials. And having this located next to the height adjustable surface really allows the LAs to easily move up to a standing position, to maybe have a quick conversation with anyone who may approach their workstation. So I thought that was a really thoughtful design. And again, overall, the design of the workstations coordinate really nicely with the private offices, how we brought the veneer panels to the workstations as well, and just a really clean, neutral palette with just a pop of that blue color in the screens.
So Jennifer, tell us a little bit about how this is changing their facilities management, right? They, I think, make a lot of moves every year, and we've talked about the personalization. That's important. Now we're giving attorneys a way to do that doesn't compromise having these sets of standards. What impact does that have overall to their facility?
Yeah, I think the biggest impact is to the facilities team, right? In the past, they used to have to pick up not only the people's stuff, but also their furniture. In the past, it was mine and it kind of went with me. And now, the single office that has the same furniture throughout, really, that's not necessary, right? Everyone can just move from office to office, and really all we're moving is content and not furniture. So it saves that facility team a lot of time and energy, and outside people. I mean, they did have support from others helping move furniture that they don't need anymore. And so it's been a big time saver and money saver for the Taft facilities team, which I think they greatly appreciate.
Yeah. Well, and I know now, being part of a national organization, maybe the success of this project will help inspire that standard in other locations to help minimize that. I can only imagine trying to move people's personal office and all their belongings all the time. Scott, let's talk a little bit about the workforce. We've got 5 generations working together. We've got an increasing rate of attorneys retiring. How is Taft supporting those transitions? Do they have a space that they can still allow attorneys who are working less and less and encourage some of that knowledge transfer?
Right, definitely. Of counsel or retiring attorneys are still very important to a legal organization. They have a lot of knowledge, they're needed, there's a necessary requirement for them. But when you're looking at efficiencies and square footages, you have to allocate going, does this person really need a private office when we need to allocate them to very high producing attorneys? So in doing and looking at that and really looking at the amount that they're in the office or coming in or proposing to come in, and this is even no more true now with now working from home, the need to come in, but really kind of co-locating them in a more combined office kind of approach, a shared office with support. Again, they still do work and they still need support and they still need to have output, but really kind of condensing them down into more of a shared area that isn't look diminished, that doesn't feel diminished, because that's the last thing you want to do is diminish one of your partners. So it's really looking at how you do this, and this is common throughout the country in that really people are looking at this a different way. Some firms, when it comes to co-counsels, they're putting them in workstations. So in reality, firms handle this all differently. Taft chose to give them more of a private, more of an upgraded feel, a little bit more higher end versus putting them in a workstation, which wouldn't have been appropriate in the Taft culture, right? But it is something that's being looked at across the country a lot more of how to deal with of counsel and retiring attorneys when your square footage needs to always reduce, because there's a global trend that fees are being reduced in legal environment too. So you have to kind of, in order to keep your profits per partner at where they need to be in a law firm, you have to look at how you juggle all that.
Yeah. Well, we are going to open up for some questions from anyone that's participating in our conversation today. But before we get to that, I'd love to ask each of you to just share if there's a fun fact from the project or something that you enjoyed most about the partnership. I know it was a lengthy process. So there's got to be some fun little tidbit that you'd all like to share. Jen, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I thought about this question, and I think I'm going to answer it, and I'm going to kind of be a little geek out a little bit on furniture with my answer. But so we worked with Julie Munique, who's the director of facilities, and she's just a joy to work with and had a great partnership. And when we were going through the task chair evaluation, and Jennifer, I don't remember how many task chairs there were that everybody got to sit test, but yeah, I remember that. And Julie, it was unanimous. Everybody fell in love with the Hayworth Fern chair, which is our premium, which is actually what I'm sitting in, but it's our premium chair. And originally had planned for those to go into the attorney offices, but Julie really, really wanted everyone to have one. And so we were able to work with the team and get the pricing where it needed to be and make it happen to meet their budget. So shortly after, I think phase one was done, so long before COVID, she graciously let us come in and conduct some tours and brought some people through to show the space. And she was really excited to talk about, more the operational changes and what the impact is to the new work environment. And so when we'd get into the furniture, usually, our team would talk about that. Yeah. But every time we would get to the workstation or an office where there was a task chair, she'd be like, you have to come over here. You have to come and sit in this chair. She would just she's like, this is the most comfortable chair you'll ever sit in. And she'd start with all the adjustments. And so I always told Julie, I said, if you ever need a job, I said, Hayworth would probably hire you because I think you do a better job of selling this chair than any of us could. So that's my funny Julie story.
And no kickbacks there. She just loves the chair that much.
No, it's so funny.
It's a good chair. All right, Scott, what about you?
It goes back to Julie and her team. In all honesty, she made every meeting very fun. She's no matter what was going on in her day, and believe you me, there was a lot going on in her days, and she always managed to keep it lighthearted, no matter what the problem was. It was never that big. We're gonna get through that, no big deal. And in all honesty, it was enjoyable because you knew you were gonna see Julie, and you're gonna be happy, and that was just the way it was. And actually, and then also the full team that was assembled for this project, it was probably one of the most. Yes, it was a very long schedule, but it was probably the least complicated, and there was it was chaos free. It was strictly, it just moved along. And a project of this scale and this much renovation, and it was down to nothing to recreate. There's a lot of things that went on, and I just applaud everyone on the project because they really knew what they were doing. So that made it very enjoyable. So
it's definitely a different experience when everyone comes to the table collaboratively, and having a client like that is a real joy. So totally. Jennifer, how about you?
Yeah, I echo the same kind of comments everyone else has said. Julie was amazing for all of us. I would say personally, I was still involved. I still talk to Julie weekly. It's been over 4 years since we started this project. And for me, we've become friends. Personally, I know everything that's going on in her life. She knows everything in mine. And that's amazing, to get out of a project, is to work with so many fantastic people and then gain some friendships at the end of it, and then produce. We had a fantastic team that helped produce an amazing project. And we lived through, COVID, still living through it, but we lived through the onset of COVID and, we still made it out the other end. So it was fantastic.
Oh, now I'm jealous that I wasn't part of the project this year.
All right. We are at our time where we can take questions now. So feel free to enter them into the chat. But while we're waiting for any questions to come in, I think I've got one. Jen had sort of mentioned the seating, kind of testing out the demos, and wondering maybe, Jen, would you want to talk about if there were any mock-ups that were done for either the private office or workstations and learn through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't say enough the importance of going through the mock-up process. And I think everybody on the team would agree that there was tremendous value in building time into the schedule to allow for that. So yeah, we actually, Fluid ordered a mock-up for the private office, which was a TUI product, which is part of the Hayworth family of brands, and then our workstations as well. And it really allowed not only all of the employees to kind of generate excitement about what was coming and understand what the product was going to be that they were actually going to be, sitting in, but also work out some of the details. And there were some changes that were made because of the mock-up. So some of the edge details on the private office product, we adjusted that a little bit. I believe the kind of the fabric on the tack board. So that was an easy thing to look at. It's like, oh no, that's not quite right. In the workstations, working through some of the IT group I know was heavily involved in just working through some of the, power and wire and cable management and things like that. I think the screen actually got a little bit changed size a little bit. So it really allows people to get comfortable with what's coming and look through some of those details that you can only see so much in the 3D renderings, right? And experience it virtually, but to actually see it and touch and feel it, I think really generated some excitement and allowed us to work through some of those details.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, having the 3D rendering is certainly an amazing thing to do, but it's a huge investment. And when you're multiplying that out, you want to make sure that you get those details right. Jennifer and Scott, maybe you guys can chime in on this one. There was a merger that happened midway through the project. What, if any, impacts did that have on it? As it sounds like the project was really flawless.
Yeah, we really didn't have much. I mean, the design was already kind of moving forward at that point, so we really didn't shift design. The only thing we had to shift was some signage and kind of branding elements, right? We changed the name. Luckily, the name Taft doesn't show up in a lot of places throughout the floors, so it was easy to kind of pause that and implement the new name partway through the design.
True, it was not overly complicated, luckily. But we kind of knew where we were going to do any branding. So it was just holding those spots until we realized what we really wanted to show. And then we just implemented it. So it was pretty seamless.
We've talked a little bit about bringing the team together early, and obviously this project was really well coordinated. When we talk about bringing the team together early, when do you think is the best point in the project to do that, and what parties does that include? We've got, our contractor, MP Johnson, as well. So maybe just speak a little bit more to that engagement and the timeline.
Yeah, I mean, for me as the project manager, Nelson was engaged early on. I mean, I think they were there right as soon as we were there. But we brought the contractor, MP Johnson, in right away. We're fit planning all these buildings, and it's really important to get pricing and know that we understand what each building's going to take if we did choose, to move locations or go somewhere else. So their involvement early on was critical. So really, we started fit planning, and they were hired. Kind of decided to be the GC early on. And, furniture, AV, all the other vendors, I think it's important to get them on, into the design process, probably in DD, somewhere in there, because they provide some value through that. You have to make architectural changes to accommodate, AV sometimes. And the sooner we can do that, we get, the right pricing and the right things on site versus having to change construction later on. So same thing with furniture. We did make a few little tweaks here and there. If you need backing or you need that kind of stuff. So the sooner they can be there, the better. It helps the entire project.
I agree.
One last question. If anyone else has something, feel free to add it into the chat. But just thinking kind of big picture on trends in legal workplace design, we've touched on quite a few here that this project exemplifies. But are there any other trends or factors that firms should consider if they're renovating or relocating their legal firm that maybe we didn't touch on today? What else are people talking about?
Well, post-COVID, I think you can't have a conversation now with a law firm without talking about mobility. It used to not be a conversation in legal. Everyone had a designated space, and that was the way that was. Now, people have found attorneys have found they can work at home. Other administrative functions can work at home. So now it's really about the idea of mobility. What percentage of your population could be mobile or would be mobile, and what does that mean to the work environment? So what are you actually planning for versus what you used to plan? So it's not really about flexibility, it's about mobility, meaning, I might not have a designated spot in this law firm, but I can come in and work and feel engaged and feel part of the firm and not have a spot. So that never used to happen in legal, and in the last probably 6 months, it's happening faster than any other trend I've ever seen being accepted, because we've been living in this almost for a year, and so it's really starting to track in legal.
Yeah, and I would add the use of technology is huge, right? It's always been there, but it's just growing exponentially, especially with everybody working from home, right? The ability to really connect, especially when you have multiple offices, right? There's really important needs to spend some money on technology throughout the project. So making budget for that.
Awesome. Jen Summers, anything last to add on that, legal trends?
I don't think so. I mean, I just, again, reiterate everything everybody else said. And I think just creating furniture applications that are going to support that, and having more of those kind of flex offices that'll be more shared, that I think in the past, the legal industry would never explore. But now, again, with COVID, everything is being accelerated, and they're much more open and receptive to looking at that, because I think cost reduction is going to be a huge factor moving forward when so many of their dollars are being shifted to technology and other things, that it'll be important to be more efficient with your real estate. And I still think there's going to be a need for more of those social spaces and spaces to connect, because I think that will be more the reason that people will want to come into the office post-COVID, is to actually connect and mentor those associates and have those kind of casual collisions and conversations that really can happen more freely in the office versus having to have every conversation be a scheduled Teams meeting. So
yeah, Teams is good for a lot of things, but the impromptu maybe not as successful there. So, well, thank you for all of you for joining today, our panelists for taking the time to put together the story and bring it to you, and everyone for attending. We'll certainly be following up and sending out some more materials, getting your feedback, and we hope that you will join us for our next Connect panel. So thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon.